Think Different Nation is brought to you by InvestOut.net, where we connect homeowners who know that their homes could sell for more if renovated, with investors who are interested in adding that value at no cost to you. Once the home's renovated, you, as the homeowner, sell the home, and the investors make their profit from the increased value of the sale. Check us out at InvestOut.net.
I don't see why you don't understand how dangerous it is out there, and that we don't approve of who you're associating with.
What, you want me to hang out with the combo that cleans the shop?
What's wrong with Anthony? Why is it corny to be smart? Why is it corny to do what you ask? Why is it corny to handle your business? That's not corny, son. That's being a man.
Good afternoon and welcome to Think Different Nation. This is Ty Glover and I'm here with Brionne Barret. Brionne and I have been a good friend for a while now, and Brionne actually is my barber. I've known him for at least, 7 or 8 years now. And what I've known and what I've learned about Brionne is that he's also an entrepreneur. He's got an incredible mind from an innovation standpoint. And so we want to talk to Brionne about how his brain works. How does he actually come up with his ideas? What's his process from a Think Different Nation standpoint? So welcome, Brionne.
Thanks for having me.
Beautiful. So can you give me a little bit of background about yourself? What is Brionne? Where does Brionne come from?
Born and raised out of Chester, Pennsylvania. Okay. Small city right underneath of Philadelphia. Oldest of 5 children. Single mom. So, it's typical urban city kid story, single family home, oldest, the responsibility falls on the oldest,
right.
So it's a typical one of those stories. It's a lot more that goes into Brionne, but, my story is a typical urban kid story.
Yeah, but I would disagree with you because I think what you're doing, some of the things that you've done, make you the atypical.
Well, I would say, Brionne, the man makes me, atypical. But as a kid growing up, to me, coming from where I come from, it was the norm. You don't know you're poor when everybody around you is poor until you start to get around some people that got, some money, and then you realize how poor you are.
Okay.
So that's what I mean when I say, the typical story, because growing up, I had a few friends that, that was a little better off than me. But for the most part, most of my friends, they were, kind of in similar situations that I was.
Okay.
So Brionne, a man, and as I went through life and getting older, realizing different things from experiences and events and things that I have been through, it changed my way of thinking and made me, react and pro-react to a lot of different things.
Understood. And just to introduce the fact that Brionne is also the owner and the CEO of JR Kickz, which is a shoe design and manufacturing company. And so I can see really why there would be the interest. You've always mentioned the fact that you love sneakers. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, my passion for sneakers goes all the way back to my childhood.
Right.
When I was young, being the oldest of 5 children, my mom, she wasn't able to always buy us the latest, sneakers. And around that time, I think, Michael Jordan's was really becoming a big, sneaker.
Okay. Right.
Penny Hardaway, was a really big sneaker. So, I wasn't fortunate to be able to, be able to run out and get the new sneakers. So when I kind of got to like middle school, I kind of got teased a little bit for my sneakers. So, I was old enough to, cross the streets and everything by myself. So I asked my mom, could I, start like, cutting grass and shoveling snow in the wintertime, to earn some extra money. So, what I would do is I would go around the local neighborhood and in the summertime cut grass, and then in the wintertime shovel snow. And from the money that I would earn from that, what I would do is I would go and buy sneakers.
Okay.
And my mom, I never forget, she always used to be so mad at me because, like I said, I grew up with very, 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 poor beginnings.
Right.
And, I would come in the house with maybe 50, 60, $70 from cutting grass or shoveling snow.
Mm-hmm.
And I would take, maybe 40, 45 of dollars of that. Sneakers wasn't very expensive back then.
Right.
If you wasn't getting Jordans and stuff, I think Jordans and Penny Hardaway's might have been the first pair of sneakers that I realized that was over $100 back then.
Okay.
But you could get a decent pair of sneakers for like $45. So I would run to the sneaker store and spend a good bit of that money that I earned on a pair of sneakers.
Okay.
And my mom, she would always, be mad at me because it would be money that I could help her towards, the bills and, food in the house.
Right.
So my passion for sneakers, it grew because it was the lack of the opportunity to be able to have a new pair of sneakers as often as my friends and my classmates, was able to have. I really got one pair of sneakers a year, and I had to keep up with that one pair of sneakers all year long. And, being young and in middle school, being teased wasn't a fun thing. You don't want to go to school for a lot of those reasons. So, that passion for sneakers, it burned at a very young age. And I didn't realize that at 11, 12, 13 years old, that it will become, later on a business. But I just knew that, once I got old enough, man, to be able to make enough money, I started buying, sneakers nonstop.
Right. Yeah. And it's ironic now that you tease me about my sneakers.
Yeah. Because, as a barber, and as a sneaker owner, a sneaker brand owner, it's the first two things that stands out to me is a person's haircut and their footwear is like, it's instant.
Yeah. Oh yeah, most definitely. I can understand that. Now, but you've mentioned the fact, it's been a difficult challenge as far as the past is concerned. You've learned from those experiences and you were able to actually you become a barber. You're very successful in that place. You've designed your own sneaker brand and line, and you actually produced it.
Yeah.
And so that's quite a bit to do, considering most folks have an idea and they don't move past that step. So what made you different from anyone else that just stopped early on when they ran into their first obstacle?
I just believe is that, like I said, that them humble beginnings, when you come up without anything, when you get opportunities to be able to do something, it's like you have to see it to the end, good or bad, but you have to be able to, see it to the end to be able to say, at least I gave it a try. If every time you took on a journey and, you stop halfway through, you never really realize how beautiful the journey was when you got to the end because you never seen it. So for me, coming out of those humble beginnings and learning how to deal with trials and tribulations at a very young age, as I got older and I started to want to be in business for myself and take on these new projects in my life, such as, JR Kickz and, being a barber. One of my biggest things was, man, you got to see this to be exactly what you thought it could be when you had the very first thought. So my very first thought when I became a barber, some 13 years ago, was, I was around a lot of the best barbers in my city at that time. Mm-hmm. And I never forget, people used to always come in a barbershop when I first started, and they used to always ask for these specific barbers because they was the best barbers.
Right.
So, I pride myself at that moment that, they will be coming in this barbershop asking for me the same way that they asked, for these gentlemen. Okay. So that at that moment for me, it was I'm not going to stop until the customers are coming in here asking for me. And I'm one of the great barbers that they mention when they start talking about, some of the best barbers in my town. Okay. So that was my first burning desire of, I'm not going to stop until I accomplish that in the barber industry. Gotcha. So transferring into, the sneaker industry, like I said, growing up, and getting to an age where as though I can, save some money and make enough money that I can buy my own sneakers, I started collecting them. So as I, started to become a sneaker collector, I started to realize how much money I was actually spending on sneakers and, making somebody else's, bank account go up every day. And I said, what, one day I had an idea. I said, I wonder how much money I done spent on sneakers.
Right.
And I totaled up all my sneakers, and I forget the exact amount, but it was probably close to almost about $10,000.
Wow.
And a buddy of mine that had a collection that was 10 times bigger than mine. I said, man, if I spent almost $10,000, then you had to spend almost close to $100,000.
Wow.
And between the two of us, that's $110,000 that we could have started our own business with. And at that moment, that was my light bulb moment of, maybe you need to look into this as something more than just, buying and collecting sneakers. So that was my very moment of, becoming a sneaker. I can't even say at that moment I wanted to be a sneaker brand. I just knew I wanted to, have some type of ownership in the sneaker industry.
Yeah.
And, that was my first initial thought. And as I got in it and I started to learn about and research and find out different things about the sneaker industry, it changed my perspective on the industry continued to change as the information became more and more valuable to me, and I started to learn how to use the information that was being given to me. I was able to, channel that information and use it into different things, but it kept changing my perspective on the sneaker industry.
Understood.
As I first came in, I just wanted to be like Foot Locker. I wanted to have a bunch of, stores. And then when I got in the sneaker industry, I started my own sneaker store and everything. I had my own little boutique. I realized, I said, man, I'm still making Nike and all these other brands richer. I'm not, I'm not the guy that's actually benefiting off of any of this. I'm getting a very small percentage, but I'm doing a whole lot of work.
You spent a lot of money. You had to go down that path, though, before you could actually learn the way to do it differently.
Very true. I spent a whole lot of money, going down that journey. And I spent a whole lot of time because, just looking back over the internet over the last 5 years, how, it's changed and grown and how much more access we have to so many different things. This was 13 years ago when I started this, and it's funny because I started both my journeys at the same time, being a barber and, starting my own sneaker company.
Right.
So both of these journeys I was taking on at the same time, and I was learning two tasks at the same time. So it was complicated and challenging, but in the light, and I'm sorry, in 2020, being hindsight, it became very much part of me that these two things all the way back to my childhood, because when I was a kid, I used to always like going to the barbershop. I'd never forget the experience of going to the barbershop. Even now as a man, I still sit in a barber chair and get my hair cut because I love the whole barbershop experience, even from a child. What
is it that, and I know we talked a little bit about the social side. What do you get from it, from sitting around gentlemen that and having those conversations and being in that space?
It's like a gentleman's club. Okay. It's that insight that, as a young man, growing up and not having, a father figure and not having mentors, you kind of got that all in one place at the barbershop. You can get some big brother advice. You can get some mentor advice. You can get some fatherly advice at the barbershop, on top of getting, a nice shape up or a nice haircut, so there's just the whole atmosphere of the barbershop as a young man. For me, it meant a lot. It might not mean a lot for other young men, but for me, it meant a lot because like I said, I didn't have a lot of those things growing up. So being able to go to a place and be able to get that, it meant a lot to me. So even now as a barber, I still, enjoy that experience of sitting in the barber chair and getting my hair cut. Yeah. But like I said, I didn't, at 12, 10, 11, 12, 13, I didn't realize what my life was shaping up to be, because at the same time, my passion for sneakers was growing as my love for going to the barbershop, because like I said, I was old enough to now be able to, go do these things on my own. So now as a man and owning my own sneaker company and being a barber, the two things that I had a great passion for as a kid turned into being my actual business now.
Understood. Yeah, it's interesting that the whole experience you had growing up where you grew up versus the experience I had growing up where I grew up. I think my experience out there in more so the suburbs, more of a white community. It's I see the way you interact with your peers, with some of your mentors, and you have a very strong bond with them, much stronger than I think I've been able to develop out living away from that, because I haven't had that core group of people that I call my friends, my mentors. So that's, there's a negative to every situation, but there's also a positive. It seems like you've tapped into that positive.
Yeah, like I think with me and my clients, it's just the relatability for me. I'm very relatable when it comes to a lot of my clients, because I've been through a lot and I've experienced a lot. So even with with me and your relationship, even though I didn't get a chance to go to the suburban schools and grow up, but being in business allowed me to shake hands with a lot of different people from various backgrounds. So it allowed me to be able to adapt to a lot of different types of people and be able to adjust. I wouldn't really say change, because I don't really change. I would say I pretty much adjust to my atmosphere or my environment that I'm around. So being a barber, that is a very key benefit of mine,
right?
Because I'm able to relate to my clients in so many ways, no matter if they're young teens, older men, in between, around my age, they in the streets, not in the streets, businessmen, whatever. I've kind of walked a little bit on a lot of different sides of the streets.
Understood. I can definitely see that. And, you and I think we were talking a little bit earlier. I mentioned myself and what I consider myself as being. I mentioned the fact that I believe, based on my orientation or who I am, how I've developed, I believe, or I would classify myself as being an innovator. And what it means to me is that I put a series of ideas together with a series of processes to create change ideas, to create products or influential products. That's what I see as the definition of who I am or what I do. What would you think your natural inclination would be if we were talk about it in those terms?
For me, I'm a creator. I'm a visual creator. Like, I love everything that has anything to do with taking something from scratch and turning it into something beautiful. So I love art. I love designing. I think that's one of the great things about me being a barber, because I'm able to take someone's hair that comes in and it's all over their head, and I'm able to turn it into a masterpiece. A painter uses paintbrush, I use clippers.
Right.
And just with like houses, those food, just being able to take those things that most people wouldn't put together and put them together and make them fit, make them look good. That's my biggest benefit. I'm a very visual creative person.
Okay. It's interesting. I'm thinking about Malcolm Gladwell's, I can't remember the book, but it's the theory of 10,000 hours, where it takes roughly 10,000 hours to develop an expertise. Obviously, you've put well over 10,000 hours just in cutting hair alone. So you've got to have some pretty incredible, or at least very specific processes that you follow when it comes to at least ideating on that head, that what the cut should look like based on what they're requesting. Can you talk about how that comes across to you subconsciously and how you may be acting upon it?
Yeah, subconsciously, when I see someone's head, it's like automatically you see the finished product actually while you're looking at the unfinished product. Okay. That's what the mental, for me, the mental part, that's the first thing I'm taking in, the mental creative of how I'm visualizing seeing his head looking when I'm done with it. Okay. And based off of what they're telling me, the type of haircut that they want. So, I'm listening to what they're telling me on top of seeing what it is that I can do off of the texture of the type of hair, and understanding with the type of hair that they have, how I need to make this haircut look so that the customer is satisfied with it. So for me, when it comes to haircut, I'm a little bit on a lot of different areas. I'm mentally, I'm creatively, physically.
Right.
I'm all in on a lot of different playing fields when it comes to cutting hair, because like you have to, in order for you to be good or great at it, you have to be able to take what's being told to you and transfer it into, a masterpiece.
Okay.
For me, it's a process of, constantly doing it over and over and over again.
Right.
It becomes a repetition, but also just understanding what I'm doing as well.
Okay.
So the repetition helps me to be, comfortable with doing it. But once I'm able to identify what I'm doing, then the repetition, it takes over. I know what I need to do at that point once I'm visually locked in.
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now here's the big question though. Have you found a way whereby the skills, the inclinations, or those tendencies that you've developed in actually cutting hair have translated over to the next part of your life, the sneaker design, the business development, and the eventual enterprise that you're growing, nationally and internationally?
Yeah, I believe everything that you go through in life, experience wise, no matter what you end up going through, it shapes you and molds you to deal with the things that you end up having to go through. For me as a business owner, I'm always constantly faced with a lot of different challenges. So I'll kind of convert back to different things that I've been through or had to deal with, to see how I can use those things now to move me forward in what I'm trying to do. So when it comes to the sneaker brand, I look at a lot of different things. Like, one, being in business as a barber helps me to deal with customer service.
Okay.
So I'm able to now apply how I deal with people on a day-to-day basis and being a barber to how I deal with people also as a business owner, and producing a product that I'm trying to present to the public people and get them to buy into. So having that 13 years of experience of dealing with people and understanding how people are when it comes to interacting with them, that helps a whole lot of having that experience being in the barber business. As far as like managing my time and my day and how I need to have balance, being a barber has helped me in that way, as far as when it transitions into the sneaker business, because like I said, you have to be able to be accountable as the owner. You have to be accountable for everything that's going on. You have to be organized of the things that's going on, and it's very little room for excuses when you come out of the gate and you trying to get something going, because people expect you to be perfect, even though you're not.
Right.
Because you're trying to get them to buy into something and get them to understand why your product is if not better, on the same quality level as what they've been buying for years.
Yeah.
So having that discipline to be accountable, on top of responsible and reliable for a product that you're putting out there to the people, being a barber, that, like I said, that transitioned into also the sneaker business. Just being able to to handle multiple tasks all at one time, because being a barber, I have to balance my book, I have to I'm a father, I have other different things that's going on. So multitasking on multiple levels, also transferring into being a sneaker brand, helps as well, because like I said, once again, you always have multiple things that you have to deal with all at the same time. So it like I always say, it's funny now when I look back at what brought me to this point in my journey, and I see how much my two journeys, because I really traveled two journeys at the same time.
Okay.
But how my two journeys was aligned at the very same time, and I didn't realize that until coming to the end of 2019, coming into 2020, because for so long I was trying to run them oppositely, saying that, all right, I can do one and then I could do the other. But when I start focusing on I can do them together, the journey actually start becoming a whole lot smoother, because I started understanding that the things that I was using And, you know, being a barber, I was still using them as being a business owner and developing a product.
Right.
So once I was able to understand that you're doing the same thing both ways, and if you use what you're doing on the one to apply it to the other, how much more you're going to accomplish. And that's what actually started to happen for me when I started applying the things that I was learning, like the marketing and the growth. Yeah, well, the marketing and the growth of growing a sneaker brand. I was able to transfer that into growing and marketing for being a barber, because I never really was big on marketing as a barber, but I was big on marketing my sneaker brand. And when I realized why I'm not marketing being a barber, I'm just as good, if not, you know, better. So when I started to adopt that same philosophy to being a barber, I started to see a growth in my clientele. I see a growth in income. When I started to apply the same things from being a barber into being an entrepreneur, business owner, and growing my brand, I started to realize the growth in my brand. So it was like I was running them bow-leggedly instead of running them together.
And that's really the only way that it can succeed, if they're running them together. I've run a lot of things separately, and they've run into each other. And then I started working on a philosophy whereby, you know, planes, for example, the most important period in time where you need to watch a plane from an air traffic controller standpoint is when it's taking off and when it's landing. During the time when it's in flight or on the ground, you really don't have to pay as much attention to it. So I would put my ideas in terms of planes, and they would be either sitting at the gate or they'd be on the runway, where I'm giving a lot more attention to that idea. And the ones that are up in the air where there's not a lot of action or activity required, I let them float until the next thing comes in, until they're ready to start landing. And then I start giving more attention. But I like the way you're talking, because you're talking about leveraging I've seen what you've done with technology and being able to apply it across and help to scale your business. But also just the philosophy itself, you know, allows you to scale, because now you're thinking in a connected way as opposed to just disjointed way.
Yeah. And you know, that philosophy of, you know, you use airplanes. I always looked at the train, and I read somewhere where it said it takes 10,000 pounds of pressure to move a train, for a train to get going.
Right.
But it only takes 5,000 pounds of pressure for the train to continue to go. So when I realized that analogy, I said, okay, so I'm gonna have to work 10 times as hard in the beginning to get it going. But once I get it going, all I gotta do is keep it going. But I don't have to push as hard to keep it going.
Right.
You know, I can now scale back and apply that other 5 pounds of pressure to something else.
I can definitely see that, you know, and if we were looking across, for example, at some of the five self symbols, for example, of emotional, physical, mental, social, and spiritual, you know, from a social standpoint, you're one of the best I've seen managing the social side of the activities. Your confidence is off the chain. You move without regard to anyone's opinion as far as what you're going to do. You don't let anyone dissuade you from the standpoint of the fact that you're following a certain path. And from a social standpoint, you build a team around you. I don't know if they're paid team members yet, but you build a team of loyal supporters who are there to do the lift with you, which is an incredible display of leadership that you've been able to show.
And you know, the sad thing is, for me personally, I would say my social side is my weakest point of all of the 5 points, because physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, I think I do very well. Emotionally, I need some work, but socially, what I've done is I've been a very blessed. I would say blessed to be able to identify a lot of my weaknesses at a very young age, which helped me to be able to channel my strengths. So what I was able to do with far socially, I just built a team of people that, you know, socially was better than me, you know. So everyone on my team, even though I don't have a college degree background, everyone on my team at thus far does have one. They were able to, integrate with, going to different schools that, had different cultures and different ethnic groups there with them that they was able to, network with, where for me, I wasn't fortunate to be able to, take on the same, journey as them guys was. But, for me, what I did was, I went to the Barnes and Nobles and I went to the YouTube University, and, I learned that way. So it allows me to be able to sit in a room and have, conversations with these guys and understand what they're talking about. But socially, I'm not a real social butterfly. I'm just, like I said, I'm very adaptable. So I'm able to get in a room and get my message and my point across. But I'm not like the guy that comes in a room and I'm able to work the room. I'm more the butterfly on the wall type of person when I get in a room. But I have, a team of guys, man, that they get in a room and they're able to, socialize and move around and, to absorb the whole entire atmosphere of what's going on. So then when I get with those guys, because they understand that I'm not a social butterfly, now we sit and we have those meetings, and now they're able to fill me in. So I was able to use my weakness and find the strength and how I can turn it into or find my strengths in that weakness. And my strength was, being able to like I said, relate to people and get people to buy into what it is that I'm doing. But now, not only that, to be able to take their talents of what they're good at and be able to benefit off of it as well. And it's a win-win for everybody, because I'm not, forcing somebody to do anything that they're not already good at. If you're already good at going in and speaking with people, all I want you to do is come in and we can work together to be able to do it together, to be able to accomplish something together. That's it. So being able to identify my weaknesses was able to allow me to strengthen my strengths, to make me to be able to be stronger in these areas. So it doesn't seem like I have any weaknesses, but that's the reason.
But it seems as if what you just said is that you pivot around those weaknesses. You're not really necessarily focusing on getting stronger in those areas, but yet you're using the energy to make sure you've got the resources in place to cover off on those weaknesses that you have.
Yeah, because for me, because I can only speak for me. For me, I look at it like, okay, I could go and take the time and strengthen myself on the social part of this, but then I can go get a guy that's already good at it.
Gotcha.
And long as me and him can socially, have a conversation and be able to be on the same page, that's all I really need.
We can't do everything.
And that's what and studying the greats, all of the greats said, you're only as good as the team you're built.
Right.
Because the thing is you got 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year. So, being able to take time that is going to pull me from my strengths to go and try to, turn this weakness into a strength, when I can just go and, put somebody that's better at it in the place of it. Like, I don't have to, I don't have to work the room if I got somebody that does it very well. I can still get all the same information that I need by just placing someone there that already does it very well. And I can go and actually take that time that I was going to spend to go learn how to get stronger in that area. I could go and apply it to other things that I'm already strong at and get better at doing those things. Yeah,
makes perfect sense. And, one of the most interesting parts about what you said is that you actually are the only one within your group that doesn't have a college degree, but yet you are the leader. And I think back to Les Brown, motivational speaker, who spoke of the fact that he was basically paralyzed at times because he didn't have a college degree, and he's speaking in front of people with high educational backgrounds, and he was feeling so self-conscious. How do you deal with that? How do you work in a space where you've got these guys that are academically more trained than you in certain areas, and how do you walk in with that confidence? Because I know a lot of folks are in a very similar situation, depending upon where they've studied, the opportunities they've had, but yet they still want to go and lead those teams.
I believe it's one of those. You just have to know where you're strong at, because I don't try to walk in their lane when we have these conversations. I understand where I'm good at and what works for me. So for me, what works is being able to um, understand that I might not be able to walk in their lane, but I know that they can't walk in mine. So if I'm strong in my lane,
That's huge.
it's like being able. It's like I bring everything. My analogies is always sports, because I look at everything from a team effort in business. So if you have a basketball team, the point guard is the point guard for a reason. So same thing for the shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and the center.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the best at your position, I know you won't outbeat me at my position.
Right.
But if I try to come out of my position to play in your position, then I know I'm setting myself up to possibly lose to you, because that's not where I excel at.
Right.
So when you put somebody in a position, you have to understand that you're putting them in that position for a reason. Not saying that you have to be blind to why you're putting them in that position, meaning like you shouldn't know what that position obtains. I know every position that I put somebody in, what comes with that position. I just know that you're better in that position than I may be. I can do it, but I prefer, if I'm going to be great at something, I'd rather have the greatest people around me to be able to do that position for me, instead of me trying to be the almighty great to do everything, So for me, being able to be in them room with those type of people, and they have the education and they have the degrees and everything, it's like, okay, I respect it and I understand it and I see it. But now when you come out of your arena and you have to come in my arena, now you have to see why I am what I am.
Right.
So I look at it as a respect thing. I respect where you came from, but you're definitely going to respect where I came from, because I earned my right to stand in a room. Otherwise I wouldn't be in there.
Okay. Now, where did that confidence come from? Because that's oftentimes the most difficult thing to build, especially when you've had a rough background and you may be walking into a space, wonder if in fact you are an imposter and you deserve to be there. So where does that confidence come from?
It's that, what do I have to lose? Confidence. Like, if you go into a room and you don't have anything going in, but everything that you need is in this room, all the resources, all the funding, all the knowledge, everything is in this room, and you get the opportunity to walk in this room and be amongst it and absorb it and take it all in. And what do you have to lose by going in there and giving it all you got? I'd rather leave it on the court and know that I gave it everything that I had. I'd rather take every shot, not knowing if I'm going to make it, but I'd rather leave the shots that I took on the court knowing that I took them, than leaving off the court and saying, man, I wish I'd have took it. So the confidence is the lack of not having that. My upbringing, I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
So not having anything is like, you can't cry over something that you don't have. The only opportunity that I have is possibly coming out with it.
Right.
So that's where that confidence come in for me at.
Yeah, it's interesting that I've had conversations over the years with folks, African Americans, who we talk about the plight, or rather the role of the African American, and the question of whether, in fact, if we had an opportunity to be able to push a button, would we turn white if we could? And for the most part, what I've gotten so far is that no, I wouldn't. And the reason why is that what I've been through has made me who I am, and therefore I would not be who I am without having gone through this experience.
And I completely agree with that, because for so long, growing up, the way I grew up is, it's like you start to ask questions like, man, if I had a different opportunity, would I change this? Would I do it differently? Like you said, if I could be, you know, a white person or anybody other than a black person, would I take that opportunity to be so? But for me, after learning my journey and why my journey was my journey, I realized no, I wouldn't change anything, because it molded me to be the way that I am. It molded the confidence. It molded that fearless mentality. It molded that creativity to think beyond the universe, you know, to see outside the box, to know that you can create something or do something that most people aren't willing to, you know, even try and step up to even say that they can do, you know. So having been brought up the way that I was brought up and going through the things that I went through, yeah, I would say I wish I didn't go through them. But then in a lot of ways, man, I could say I'm grateful that I did, because I could be something worse. Who knows if I'd have been something better, because it's not guaranteed. So I take the person that I am and the person that I'm molding myself into being, you know, that evolution of a being that I believe that I can become.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to Dave Chappelle's special where he talked about Anthony Bourdain, or who killed himself, committed suicide, had everything going for him in the world. Meanwhile, one of his friends who was a lawyer, had done so well and went through a divorce, lost everything, wound up next time he saw him working in a McDonald's. And he asked the question of, why didn't you kill yourself?
Yeah.
You know, but he had grown in a different way, and therefore that's why he's still here. We all have our obstacles, and I think the more you are forged in that fire earlier on in life, the better you're able to come out of those obstacles and minimize the issue and then maximize the opportunity coming out of it.
Yeah, but it's a fire, man, that most especially in the African American culture, man, most of us, we don't come up out of it, and then we don't realize it soon enough for us to be able to come up out of it. We become a product of our environment. You know, we believe that this is the norm for us. You know, we believe that what we go through in our living situation is a normal thing, because it's what we become accustomed to. So those of us that actually do make it out, you know, it's almost on you feel like you're a sellout because you figured it out. But for the most part, I think it's not so much as a sellout thing if you're able to, you know, reach back and grab someone else to understand what you was able to understand. And I think that's the biggest thing in the African American culture, with those that actually, you know, succeed and make it out of our you know, our environment,
right,
of how we're grown, versus the ones that, you know, they stay in or never make it out. You know, it's us. I believe it's each one teach one. It's our job to reach back and grab somebody else, and then somebody, I mean, else does the same thing. And before you know it, man, you have enough that was able to make it out to, you know, be able to make a solid movement to show our culture that it's possible. Because the only way you know something is possible is by seeing someone else do it first.
Yeah,
And
that's so right.
And for me, when I took on a journey of starting my own sneaker brand, you know, I tell people even now, like, I want to be as big as Nike, if not bigger. And people be like, man, do you know how big Nike is? And I'm like, yeah, that's why I want to be as big as Nike, if not bigger.
Right.
Because somebody showed me that it was possible.
Yeah.
Now, if I can be, you know, a black man that come from the inner city and grew up without anything handed to him, to be as big as Nike, what opportunity did I just give the next kid that came from where I came from, or in the city similar to my city and came up in the same type of upbringing that I came up? What type of opportunity did I just give that kid to say, man, if Brionne Barret can do it, man, I can do it. So for me, I believe that it's almost like it's like your job, your purpose. Once you've been entrusted with that duty, I believe it's your job, your purpose to reach back and show someone else how to be able to do it.
Right. I definitely understand that. For a while now, and I've thought about, I have 2 daughters, and I've thought about the plight from the standpoint of, to be honest with you, I didn't want sons. I know, being African American, that, or at least I feel, that society preys on our black boys. And they go into the prisons at a much higher rate. They're unemployed at a much higher rate. And so I wanted the path to be a little bit easier, at least for me, by having girls. And I was blessed with that. But I do think about the situation, especially concerning our young boys that are lost, that don't have the environment that's supportive of them being able to do what you've been able to do. And you speak with such inspiration. And confidence that you've actually moved the ball for me. I know we've talked a lot of times, and I presented thoughts and ideas to you, and so at a certain point you're like, all right, now stop talking and do. Yeah. And I finally had to start doing, but that was big for me.
And like I said, being a barber for 13 years, I've literally, a lot of my kids that I started with, when they was like, little boys, 6, 7, 8 years old, man, they're grown men now. Right. Some of them that I got, a little later around, their teenage years, they married, they got kids now. Yeah. And, to see the road that they traveled, being in a barbershop and, being around so many barbers and watching the different type of clients that they came in and out, seeing a lot of these guys on the front newspaper, some of them, being killed, some of them going in and out of jail. And then to look at my clients and to see how very little few of my clients have been, to jail, or how many of them have been, murdered, from being in the streets, how many of them has actually been to college, how many of them graduated college, how many of them is married and, have, a family that they're
fulfilling lives. So,
and I don't want to never take credit for nobody else's success. But, when they say, man, Bree, I appreciate, the years of, wisdom and knowledge and, just telling me, not to do this. And it was like I said, I believe it was my job to do so. I look back at, if I didn't become a barber, would that kid still went to college? Would that kid graduated college? Would that kid not have gotten into the streets, because of the conversations that we constantly had every week or every 2 weeks when they was coming in and getting their haircuts for years? I mean, I was like a second parent to a lot of these kids. And I didn't know this until a lot of these kids said this out of their own mouth. Yeah. Because for me, it wasn't something that I was set out to try to do. It was something that it just came with, who I was and understanding. Like I said, I came from that life. So why would I tell you to go to that same life that I didn't want to be in, especially if I know all about it, where it led me and where it can lead you, so seeing a lot of these young kids and now having kids of my own and being a father, I just had my son, my oldest son, he just turned 13. And like you said, you believe, that, society just preys on our boys. And for that, I believe, our job as parents is to set up our kids to be able to be in a position to, not deal with it, to understand what it is that they have to deal with, but to try to remove them as far away from it as possible, as much as possible. See, when you're in the inner city and you grow up in the inner city and you deal with all the things that come with being in the inner city, you're automatically put in a statistic box. Right. So because you're automatically put in that statistic box, you're going to automatically be confronted with those scenarios that so many of our young black men are confronted with on a day-to-day basis, just because of your address or where you're living at. Versus if my son is in a suburban area and I'm a part of a lot of the things that goes on in the suburban community as well as I am in my own community. Now my son is involved in those things and my children are involved in those things. So now it means the community knows my children just as much as they knows me, no matter if it's the suburban community or the inner city community. So which means now the cops, now the politicians, everybody, that I shake hands with as a business owner and as, activist, what they would call me now. I didn't give it to myself. I didn't even want the title, but it's just, doing the things that I'm strongly a believer of. So now in doing those things and having my kids around those things, my kids are meeting those same individuals. Right. So now when they come across officer so-and-so that might have pulled them over, it's like, okay, oh, you're so-and-so kid, man. Right. Why you're speeding? It's now my kids are not afraid of a scenario that could typically go wrong, with 9 times out of 10 do go wrong across the United States in these urban communities. Right. So I believe it comes once again as a parent, our job to set our kids up to be in a position of safety, no matter what it is that we're doing. And hopefully, because it's not 100%, hopefully, if our kids are put in that position that they're able to walk away from it with just a citation or a ticket, because it don't always go that way.
Right. And I think the biggest one I've learned as far as working with my daughters is cause and effect, understanding there's a consequence to everything, whether you see it or not. Mm-hmm. There's a consequence. And if you're willing and comfortable to live with the consequences of the action, thinking 2 and 3 steps down the road, then go and do it and have a good time. But recognize there is a consequence.
Mm-hmm. And understanding, like, even with, the being pulled over by the cops, not heightening a already tense situation. If it's a tense situation going in, it can only get worse if you heighten it from that point, because it was already at a bad level from the very beginning. Right. So with a lot of our kids and just our people in general, not antagonizing the situation, because you're right don't always mean you have to be right. It's a right way of going about some things, and it's a wrong way about going about some things. And I think 9 times out of 10, a lot of times when we're right as a culture that's always been suppressed by the things that we go through, when we're right, it's like we want you to understand I'm right. And it's not the right place for you to actually try to prove that you're right. Sometimes you might just need to kind of just bite your tongue and, handle it the right way. If that, officer, went about it the wrong way, they have a superior, they have someone above them, and that person have someone above them, that you can get results, you can get lawyers, and you can get the results that you're looking for if you go about it the right way. But you can't do anything if you're not here to tell about it, and if you handle the situation the wrong way from the very beginning. Yeah. So as identifying those situations from the very beginning and being able to, understand, all right, this is how I need to handle this.
Yeah, and I'd add just one more point onto that, the fact that life is not fair. And whoever told you that life was fair, took you down the wrong road, because life is not fair.
Very true. Very true.
So last question for you. I definitely have had a great time talking to you and getting to know you especially better. What's the next move for JR Kickz? What's the 5-year plan for how you're going to grow?
So JR Kickz for the next 5 years is like we've been working on some great relationships over the last 2 years. And not just working on those relationships, but also learning the actual business. I had a meeting last year with New Balance, and I wanted to do some business with them. And eventually we'll get back to the table to do the business. But the information that I got from New Balance was, I think, to me, was the most important information that I possibly got in my 13 years of putting JR Kickz together. And it was understanding that as you grow and you want to take on these tasks, like I said, I want to be as big as Nike, if not bigger, and understanding what comes with that statement. is very important of how you're going to accomplish it. So with saying that, and then having a meeting with New Balance and understanding that New Balance is a $8.6 billion sneaker brand, and they're at the smaller end of the sneaker brands at 8.6 billion. But understanding that what they told me and the information that they gave me of how to prepare myself as a brand. Like I said, coming out, I wanted to be like Foot Locker. But then as I went through the process, I understood that being a brand was what was going to help me to be able to not only stand the test of time, but be able to chart my own course. Exactly. Because as long as I was buying Nikes and Adidas and Vans, I was never going to be able to chart my own course. At any moment, they can take my account. At any moment, they can tell me they don't want to do business with me. At any moment, they can sink my ship or make me basically reset what I've been working so hard for. And shoot, after 10 years, 13 years, 15 years, 20 years of doing business with somebody, and then they say they no longer want to do business with you, and your whole relationship or your whole business foundation has been built around someone else's success, that's not real success for me. Right. So over the next 5 years, what we're working on is for this year, 2020, we're opening our headquarters for the JR Kickz brand. So we're going to be opening our warehouse because everything right now is on our website. We're redoing the website for 2020. So we shut down.
Where can we find you at? So you're not.
Right now, the website is down because we're going through construction, but it's www.jrkickz.com, and Kickz is with a Z. Okay. All one word. But we'll have everything back up and running before the summertime. So we're really getting in position for the summer lineup. So we've been designing a whole new apparel line that we've been working on: hats, t-shirts, slides, sneakers, jackets, sweatsuits. So we've put a whole catalog together of what our brand is going to consist of.
And can we find you on Facebook? Find your actual products today on Facebook?
Yes, Facebook and Instagram, all at JR Kickz, JRKICKZ.
Gotcha, beautiful.
But what we realized is identifying what the brand was actually going to be and how we was going to be represented. Identifying what our products was going to be and how we were going to be able to make those products better over the next 5 years. Because in the one sense of just doing business is knowing your business. So we had to, like I said, first identify what our business was going to be. Once we identify what our business was going to be, then we can actually learn how to actually grow and scale and market our business. You can't market something that you don't really know about. So, and understanding those things, now it's getting our marketing in a position that now we can now put our product in front of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people now. Whereas though when we first came out, we were just trying to get the product out there. Yeah. Now it's understanding how to get the product out there and how to get the product out there to not just 100,000 people, but 100,000 people that actually wants to see our product. Right. You see, now it's target marketing that we've been working on and focusing on. So moving forward over the next 5 years, it's the growth of those things, the growth of what our brand is going to look like, what the company is going to look like, what we're going to where we're going to look like in the next 5 years, what we're going to put in place the next 5 years. So the big thing this year that we're trying to accomplish is bringing the two entities together, which is, like I said, I've been a barber for 13 years and I've been growing JR Kickz for the last 13 years. So bringing those two entities together to be a collaboration is what I'm doing. I'm stepping all the way outside the box on this one without giving out too much information at this very moment, because it's we're still developing it. But you know, bringing those two entities together and trying to do a collaboration in those two industries of barber and sneakers and bridge the gap between those is what we've been working on for 2020. So I've been working on some concepts, and I've been putting a lot of things in place, and I've been talking to a lot of people. So hopefully, if all goes well, by the end of the summertime of this year, we can have the whole concept and everything in full swing, and be able to give people an idea of what I've been putting together for the last 2.5 years. That's been taking me some time, but I love the idea. I love the concept. I love how we're bridging the gap between the two. And I think it's going to be not only just a unique thing, but it's going to be an experience that you're going to have. And that's what my focus has been, looking at all the fallen companies and brands over the last 5 years. How many companies have closed? How many stores, especially retail brands, how many stores have been closed? How many businesses have been going out of business? And one of the big things that I've realized is that people like an experience when they go into places. That's why they go there. They go there for the experience of that place. And when you no longer are able to give the experience, people go somewhere where they can get the experience at. So in retail, I'm learning, if I could give you an experience, that's the reason that is going to draw you in the first place. Then if I could give you a quality product on top of the experience, that's what's going to keep you coming back to the experience.
Right.
So in doing so, that's been the number one deciding factor in how we're growing the brand this year. How we're doing it, what we're doing, and why we're doing it is the key things that we've been focusing on.
Understood. That's beautiful. I can have a vision for that, because I can theoretically sit back and think of how I would do it, connecting those pieces together. And it's all about connecting the experiences. So I definitely can appreciate that. The last question for you: do you have any books that you would recommend? What's your top number one book that you'd recommend for people who are trying to follow on a similar path?
Oh man, I got top book. I recently I read 48 Laws of Power probably about 4 times. I'm a real big audio book guy because
Likewise.
I don't have a lot of time to actually sit and read them, but I do. I'm always in the car. I'm always listening to some type of form of audio.
Was that John Maxwell?
I gotta look it up again and see who
Okay.
that was. For 48 Laws. No, 48 Laws of Power is not John Maxwell.
Okay. Gotcha.
But that's my most recent book. But one of my favorite books that I've read was Think and Grow Rich.
Robert Kiyosaki, is that?
Robert Kiyosaki.
Right.
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay.
Think and Grow Rich is
that's Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie. But they have the also one. I think his name is Robert Greene. Okay. They give it to you in 2 different manuscripts. They give it to you in a more Caucasian, to be politically correct, form, and then they give it to you in a more African American manuscript.
Is it more of when you say African American, is it more from the cultural standpoint, the experience standpoint?
Yeah, the culture, the experiences, the things that typically as African American that you would have to go through a lot more to get to the land of milk and honey, right, versus and the other one from the Caucasian, have like the Isaac Newtons and Carnegie, like they have those type of guys in there that
okay, so they have the people who you can best relate to. Understood.
Like they give it to you from the Robert Greene, they give it to you from like Oprah Winfrey and those people that came and have accomplished success at a great magnitude that you can relate to. So I've read both of them, and from both perspectives, it's a good read. But 48 Laws of Power has been where my head has been at lately.
I've got to pick that one up. So thank you so much for coming on. I truly appreciate it. This is the first podcast we're going to be releasing, and I truly appreciate you being there.
I truly appreciate you having me and me being the first one to introduce the podcast.
Beautiful. Thank you again, sir, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.